going to go ahead and share my screen here, and I'm just going to walk through a couple minutes here of some of the tools that we've put together that can assist landowners, real estate professionals to dig into and explore some of the concepts, Sonja, that you're going to be covering. So as you're walking through some of these folks and the different revenue streams, some of them might be wondering, okay, well, great, how do I get that information? That's what LandGate does. So what you're looking at here is our land app tool that we have on LandGate. So if you go to landgate.com, you can go ahead and get access to this. Jordan and Michaela will go ahead and share that link in the chat here. But it's a very simple tool with an enormous amount of data. But all I have to do is click on a piece of property. You get coverage nationwide with your $10 a month subscription. Every landowner across the United States, every parcel boundary across the United States. We don't limit it by the state or the county. You get it nationwide. But what happens when you click on a piece of property in LandGate, you're going to see value indexes, you're going to see risk indexes, you're going to see parcel data, who owns it, transaction data, all of that information. And then you're going to see a bunch of property features. As you start clicking through some of these things, our algorithm and our technology provides this information real time to you. So it breaks every piece of property down, elevation, slopes, how many acres of property you have. If you're in a more residential area, how many restaurants, things like that are nearby your property, how many trees per acre, things like that, soil types, a lot of really cool information that you can get about your own property or everyone else's as you have the subscription. What Sonja is going to really talk about to us now is, or coming up, is how you make money off of these additional resources here. LandGate's a really good tool for you to do due diligence, because as you start clicking on these parcels and you get information tied back to that specific parcel. So it'll summarize for you, and you can add as many parcels as you want. But as you start adding these parcels, all of the data populates and summarizes for you all of that information. We'll touch on solar here really quick. If I wanted to learn about solar information on this property, it's going to tell me transmission lines, substations near solar farms. It's going to show me how many buildable acres I have. All of this really useful information to give me a good foundation of what I have on my property, what values I could have, what risks I may have. This is a property in Southwest Pennsylvania. There's good, strong potential here for oil and gas contamination due to abandoned wells. But all of that information is provided to you nationwide. All of these indexes and metrics change depending on what parcel you're clicking on and what part of the United States you're in. So that is the LandGate tool. You can look at listings, MLS listings, public listings. You can post your own listings up on LandGate, whether you would like to lease your property, sell revenues, cash flow streams. You can do all of that for free, no commission, no fee on LandGate. So that is our tool. A lot of real estate professionals use it, just like Sonja. But the reason why we wanted Sonja on with us here today is she has put together, and she's part of a company called GeoRanch. And Sonja, you guys won the Land Tech Accelerator Award for the Real Estate Land Institute. For those of you that don't know who RLI is, they are a group associated with the National Association of Realtors, and they really focus on land-based applications, realtors, brokers, and they provide an enormous amount of resources and data out there to the land world. So Sonja, GeoRanch, you guys won the Tech Accelerator Award. We won it, I think, a couple years before that, but it's good to be in good company. Sonja, please give us a description of yourself, your background, GeoRanch, what it is you guys do, and go ahead and let's go ahead and get launched into your presentation here and start teaching folks about how they can potentially be making maybe some additional revenue on their property.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, so if everybody's ready, let's go ahead and explore what we call agriculture's perfect storm. Go ahead. And next slide.
Okay, next slide. Okay.
Not everyone's aware, but 40% of America's farm and ranch land is owned by retiring landowners. Retiring landowners, they need help with succession plans. And as we all know, access to land is a major problem for new and expanding ranchers. And there's just no easy way to connect the two. Next. Oh, wait, would you go back one slide, Craig?
Yep.
Back again.
Yes. Yep. No problem.
If you'll, I just wanted to explain something. To me, this is very personal, and here's why. After my father's death and his 7-year battle with dementia, it left my mom and my sisters and I with some very difficult decisions about our land. As the oldest of 3 girls who'd worked alongside my dad and grandpa for nearly a decade, I felt a deep sense of responsibility to continue their legacy and the legacy started by my great-great-grandparents in 1871 when they came west and acquired land thanks to the Homestead Act. We actually have the original deed. We also have the deed of sale of those 160 acres that sold for just $480 20 years later. Today, that same land would appraise at about $480,000. This striking difference highlights the immense value of land over generations and the importance of exploring options beyond selling. Next slide.
Sonja, I think I want to real quick. I think that's really good context, right? You come from a family of landowners, right? You have an emotional tie to the land. This family, you didn't just buy this land as an investment property 5 years ago. This is part of you. This is part of your family. You don't want to sell this piece of property, right? And I think you framed this context, this conversation very well, because there's a significant amount of people online right now that I'm guessing are in the same boat. The last option they want, Sonja, is to have to sell that piece of property, right? So the only option for them, how do they make revenue? How can they help generate more revenue as their tax bases go up, as the whole world gets more expensive? How can they make this farm work? How can they make the ranch work? How can they make the timber? How can they make this land make some more money for them? So you're in those shoes. You've been in those shoes, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, and here's a synopsis of the situation of retiring landowners. As you can see, only 29% have succession plans in place, and that's putting a vast amount of land at risk. We provide options beyond selling, options like exploring new revenue streams, partnerships, and leasing. Next. Our solution is to be a guide for landowners as their fiduciary. You know, we're real estate land professionals, and we act as a fiduciary. Together, we'll explore options and weigh the benefits and risks of each, and then provide the legal and real estate expertise to create the right plan based on the landowner's objectives. Next slide. And really, when you consider it, it's just a natural design. There are real estate land professionals working on a local, national, and regional level, inviting local community engagement and consultations with other professionals to help ensure the success of our customized solutions. Next. Just as websites are critical to connect the right buyer to the right seller through their land broker, we believe that a well-managed site connecting landowners with new opportunities and potential partners, also through a land broker, will provide a high level of privacy, and through pre-qualification and vetting, will increase the success of both parties. Next. And as Craig mentioned, our process really does begin with a detailed land study from LandGate, what they call their property report, examining such factors as geography, geology, soil, solar, and wind potential, and more. And this helps us determine the highest and best use of the land, then tailor the next steps based on each client's unique situation and objectives. as I know, when we were going through our decisions in our family, there was highest and best use, but there was also what would honor our legacy. And it wasn't necessarily what would provide the most income. And next.
Okay.
And here are just a few lists of the revenue streams that we have explored and the partnerships we've created to help our landowners make those decisions. Agroforestry, renewable energy projects, ecological credits like carbon, agritourism, like educational tours, farm stays, and event centers, wineries, which are very popular here, specialty crops, livestock leasing, and that might include integrating regenerative ranching that might help increase the soil health, conservation and conservation easements. As you know, easements provide revenue to preserve the land and a lot of tax benefits. Conservation programs also can be very financially easy to implement based on some of the programs that are available now. Hunting leases, and that could even include photo shoots in the off season, water rights, and silvopasture, which is integrating trees and forestry into grazing. Next. So please feel free to reach out and I'll answer your questions now, but here's my contact information and we're here to help you and your clients, if you're realtors, navigate these transitions.
Sonja, that's really interesting. I want to put it into, sometimes I can be dense, so I have to put it into ways that I can understand. What it seems that GeoRanch and your group does is something very, very similar to a financial advisor, right? So if you look at how folks hold assets, let's say there's someone out there who has the majority of their assets are built into indexes, stocks, bonds, those things like that. And they have a financial advisor that understands all of those different things, where you can get a higher rate of return, tax shielding, all of those different things. Some of the things you mentioned there, they're going to leverage that financial advisor because that's what that financial advisor does. The folks that are on this call and your family, right? Your largest asset, the most important thing to you, the biggest monetary device you have is your land, right? So you guys are essentially, rather than being a financial advisor advising folks on those assets, you're advising folks, large landowners that have the vast majority of their net worth and their assets are their land. It's their farm, it's their ranch, it's their timberland. And you're essentially, you would be essentially the GeoRanch group is essentially a land advisory group. Is that a good way to put it?
Absolutely. I mean, because until you know the value of your land and what your options are, it's really hard to create that succession plan or even know your next step.
So let's say, I'm just going to throw a scenario at you. Let's say that, before I do that though, let's get a little bit more information about GeoRanch. So what parts of the countries or part of the country have you currently done this for? Do you have clients? Do you specialize in a certain part of the country? Is this nationwide? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the US is big and it's hard to be an expert at everything. And because I really know the culture and the environment of the land west of the 100th meridian, and it is so different, that's my area of focus. Now, I can definitely refer people who are east of the, basically, if they're east of North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, I know who to refer them to that could probably help. But really, the Plains and West are really where our expertise is, and that's kind of the expertise that we've built around us as far as those professionals that can really guide based on that.
I think that's a big leverage point for the Real Estate Land Institute. At least, you know, I'm not a broker. I'm not a member of RLI. We're partnered. We do a lot of events with them. But it's really interesting when we go to the national conferences and things like that and see the interaction between the folks with RLI. Just like you said, you may not be an expert with that example we looked at on LandGate was in Pennsylvania, right? You may not
Yeah.
be an expert there, but your knowledge base and your network, you can assist someone there. You can assist a landowner, a client there, because that person now has access to your entire network as well.
Yeah. And let's face it, I mean, maybe they're, as the guide in between kind of the landowner and the client, or as the guide between the landowner and the broker that we might refer them to, I can help that broker understand maybe some other options besides selling
Very good. I want to go
and help
back
them
to I
plug
want to
in.
go back. I want to go back to this slide because there's probably some people out there thinking is, you know, in the same situation your family was. Last thing we want to do is sell the farm and sell the ranch. We don't want to get rid of it, but we've got to find a way to make revenue. Looking through this list, at least from LandGate's perspective, there's different levels of potential revenue throughout looking at this list. And a lot of that's driven by the amount of revenue that's going to be derived from any of these different types of resources is going to be directly correlative to the impact that it has on the land. So for instance, if you have a carbon credit, especially like a very passive carbon credit, you don't really have a whole lot of encumbrances on the property, right? And just for the folks on the call that maybe don't know what a carbon credit is, a carbon offset means that you would voluntarily elect for your property to enter a carbon credit program where your property would sequester carbon dioxide. The more vegetation on your property, the more carbon dioxide is being sequestered into the soil. So there are companies that will voluntarily pay you and enter a contract with you to offset the carbon emissions that they make by the carbon sequestering that's taking place on your property. Now, that's an example of a really low impact type of revenue generation potential. Even like, you got hunting leases on here, not that big of an impact on the property. You're still using the property and doing everything else that you're doing, maybe other than taking an animal off of it every year. Whereas now, if you would look at solar energy, and let's say that's something that's been very, very popular. We've had a lot of webinars and things along that. And I know, Sonja, there's probably been quite a bit of work with GeoRanch of people interested in generating revenue because it can generate a significant amount of revenue relative to some of the more passive things such as hunting leases and carbon credits. Now you have to look at the trade-off there, right, Sonja? You have to look at it because now those acres, whatever's going to be put under panels, those are essentially off limits to the property owner throughout the term of that lease. Now you get compensated significantly for those. But that's something, right? That's something that the landowners on the call need to consider. The more impactful it is on the property, the more restrictive your use on the property is, likely the higher revenue that's going to come. The less restrictive the activity is, the lower the revenue streams. And that's probably something that you and your clients have to balance, right, Sonja?
Yes, and and that's one thing that the LandGate land study really helps guide us on.
Right, is because that's the thing, looking at it and saying,
yes,
what's a possibility here, right?
Exactly.
What is a possibility? And that's the and this is something we say with a lot of landowners, at least from LandGate's perspective. We cover all types of energy. We cover solar, we cover wind, battery storage. We also cover oil and gas. We also cover minerals. It's not my, or even any of the consultants, professionals, Sonja, right? It doesn't really matter what I personally think about any of these types of resources, where I love them or hate them. It's our job to get the information out to the landowner so that they know what the potentials are on their property. And I think that's an important distinction that people need to understand is just understanding what the potential is. You might not like it, you might completely love it, but just knowing what the potential there is for the property, I think is important.
Yes, and speaking of solar, I mean, I know that one of the major, I'm not saying, you know, I am completely neutral. I'm a fiduciary, so my
Yep.
role is just to guide. But one thing that you hear a lot about solar is it takes away farm and ranch land. Well, I've been a member of the American Solar Grazing Association almost since it started. And the potential to graze sheep and cattle and have all sorts of animals under those solar panels and see some of the benefits from the shade, not only to the animals, but also to the plants or what is being grown. And even just to offer a solar company an alternative to blading all the topsoil off the land. I mean, there are some ways to do it. And you know, another thing is, you know, I remember reading in Livestock Weekly not too long ago about a rancher in the San Angelo area that was talking about making that hard decision of putting solar panels on his land.
Mhm.
And it took him years to make the decision. But in the end, those 20 to 50 acres he put into solar allowed him to keep the land and his
That's right.
herd.
That's right. That's right. And I can name many scenarios just like that, where there were family members who were not, and it doesn't need to, it's not even just solar. They didn't want to disturb the farmer ranch from what it was historically
Yeah.
being conducted as, right? They didn't want to change it, but
Yeah.
them making a slight change enabled them to be able to pass the farm or the ranch down to another generation, or in the case of putting a solar farm on it, could potentially change the financial situation of the entire family, which I know of several scenarios of that as well. But we do have quite a bit of questions coming in here, Sonja. This
Okay.
one's coming in from Ben M. What does the typical livestock lease look like? Wondering how long these leases are in general, and what the typical lease payments would be. What are you seeing on your side? What could they expect?
Well, you know, well, first of all, we're so fortunate in the fact that the USDA monitors by county lease rates every year. So, I mean, it's wonderful. And, you know, it may, you know, here's a great example between, you know, west of the 100th meridian and the great Midwestern cropland area. Cropland may lease for $300-400 an acre. In West Texas, you can, I mean, the average lease is $10 an acre. But of course, you know, so it depends on the forage and some of the, you know, the improvements that are on. One thing that really we've been exploring, because, you know, 80% of the land we farmed and ranched was leased. And one thing that I've been really exploring is options to the standard leases, which are, you know, just a cash payment or a crop share lease. Um, there's a rancher in Kansas that has about 7,000 acres, and he's been doing regenerative ranching for quite some time. And he owns the land, and his revenue is based on a wind lease and lease payments from the people who are on his ranch managing the the herd who actually own the livestock. And there's also an equity situation kind of built in over time. And I just think that we need to start looking at those kinds of innovative solutions that are good, really good for both parties.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that's if, and you know, if you'd like, you can email me and I'll tell you about six or so more lease options. But you know what I see that is really exciting, if I can, um, a lot of, well, a lot of companies, carbon companies, are actually creating agreements with the lessor and the lessee. In other words, the landowner and the person leasing.
Mhm.
Um, and there are some, you know, for like a recreational ranch where maybe you don't have time to visit it, but about 2 or 3 times a year, to have someone on the land actually, well, the beauty of it is it's additional security. And also you're actually helping to enhance some of the soil and create more value for your land by having someone maybe doing some regenerative ranching to improve the carbon and also have the livestock. And in a lot of cases, I've seen that really be a great bridge between the landowner and the grandchildren. Maybe the son and daughter aren't interested, but there is then that opportunity for that ranch manager to actually train and develop a whole new generation of stewards on the land.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's important. There's a question that comes in here a little bit. I don't know a whole lot about the topic, but Donnie asks, can you discuss agritourism aspect a little bit more? So what is it, Sonja? I mean, what types of tourism are you talking about with agritourism?
Well, farm stays are getting more and more exciting. People are getting more and more excited about farm stays. There's
Which
there's
is
a company.
what is a farm stay? Is that where?
It's
Yeah, I
kind
don't
of
know
like
what.
an Airbnb on a farm.
Okay,
And
very
then
good. Okay.
usually what is included in that may be an educational tour, an opportunity to also, work side by side with the farmer. Um, See, I'm trying to think of some other options for agritourism. Oh, well, wineries are agritourism, if you want to get right down to it. Wineries and wine tastings and exploring the winery. That's kind of an aspect of agritourism.
What
Um,
about what about a corn farmer in Iowa? Does he have
like
a
with
does he got a shot at agritourism there or
Well, there's in the fall he could do a corn maze,
okay.
that kind of thing. Um, let's see. I'm trying to think. Yeah, they're pick your own ears.
Well, I think it's really
you
funny.
know.
The agritourism, the idea is interesting to me because, like I said, it's an Airbnb. It's the idea of a dude ranch was always crazy to me because I'm from a very rural part of the country where people ranch for a living.
Yeah,
they
right.
it's hilarious to them that people will pay to go out and do their
Mhm.
work with them and do their job for them.
Right.
But that's a real thing. And I think
It is.
that's that's even more of a possibility that to be able to go out and help with a harvest. I mean, the amount
Yeah.
people don't understand how interesting and and cool their lifestyle of farming and ranching actually is relative to 98% of the population of the United States. It's unbelievably fascinating. And I think that when it comes to agritourism, thinking outside the box a little bit of
Hmm.
driving a 750,000 to $1 million combine and
Yeah.
just watching that machine work in the field and then putting it into a grain cart, and the whole process might be redundant because someone's been doing it since they were 8 years old and now they're 60 years old and they're still doing it. That might be
Yeah.
unbelievably fascinating to someone to do. So just thinking outside the box
So,
there, I think there's bringing your lifestyle into somebody who may be stuck in an office or behind a computer. That is agritourism, right? In a nutshell.
yeah, and the economics are just as are night and day. I mean, you can actually, there's a great organization worldwide called the WOOF, and it's called the Worldwide Organization of Working Farms. And and you can volunteer to work with them during harvest for a week. And it's just like almost a simple trade, your labor for being able to stay there with them. And then also in the very opposite end, I mean, as you know, there are companies like I can't think of the name of it right offhand, but where you can actually stay in a staying in a multi-million-dollar ranch house and have access to all of the amenities for like 8 to 10,000 a night. It's just, it's all over the range. Yeah,
Sure.
there are a lot of options.
That's it. And so you help your clients with all of that, identify again, highest and best use of agritourism, what might work there.
Yeah,
Going to go to
good point.
another question. Going to go to another question here. So Garen asked, and this is a question for LandGate, how do we attract solar developers to their listings that are up on LandGate? And that's part of the marketplace component that LandGate is. So if Sonja posts some of her clients' property up on LandGate for solar power or wind or carbon credits, or a landowner does that themselves,
Yeah.
that listing goes up in front of all of the major developers of that resource in not just the United States, but the world. So we have an enormous amount of data that those folks subscribe to and get access to in different modules throughout LandGate. So they're using the tool. They're using LandGate every day to get access to data to understand what the cost of power through a transmission line or substation is, but then they're also looking at the opportunities that come to the market. They reach out directly to Sonja, directly to the landowners. Whoever posts that listing gets an outreach directly. So that's how folks come to LandGate. Let's see here. Let me look at another question here that would be good, Sonja. Let's see here. Eric's asking for leasing opportunities. Sonja, in your mind, what you've seen, what options tend to be the most profitable for long-term type of agreements?
Solar and wind, I'd say.
I'd say this. I was going to say the same thing. As far as and you can kind of balance between. Wind is interesting, right? Because the closer you get to towns and municipals, closer you get to homes, the tougher it is for wind to work, right? Enormous swaths of land, mostly in very rural areas. Solar, they can get packed in pretty tight, right? So that we've seen the same thing. Long-term revenue generation from solar projects can be quite significant. Along those lines, even a step above that as far as revenue generation goes. Now, these are smaller footprints, but battery storage, let's just touch on that really quick, Sonja. Battery storage, these facilities where literally they're just big batteries that sit on people's property. They pull power off of the grid when the demand is very low and there's a lot of electrons. And then they put electrons back onto the grid when you have peak demand and maybe there's not enough electrons into the grid. So it's a pull and push type scenario, but those can be quite lucrative. Down to a few acres is what we've seen with battery storage. But those are long-term type contracts, 30, 40, 50 years, but significant revenue. Some of the carbon contracts, right, Sonja, can be fairly long-term as well, but you don't see as much revenue with them because of the impact that we talked about earlier.
No, that's true. But they do combine nicely, like with agroforestry and silvopasture and some of those other things that can increase the value of your land. I mean, that's one thing, one of the benefits of carbon. So.
RPK asked a question: how do we find the solar and carbon programs? And I'm going to plug you here, Sonja. That is what you do, right? That's part of your job as a land advisor, is identifying that value for the landowner, where the highest and best value could come from. But then you go ahead and put it on the market, get as many offers, get the best deal possible, and that landowner can decide what they would like to do. Is that a decent summary, Sonja?
Yes, and that's where your listings really come into play too. Obviously once we put the listing on LandGate, and just that's where your developers that are looking for that region or that area that's where they're going to be looking. So yeah, it's great.
So you kind of
There are,
you kind of you kind of take that burden from me. So if I'm the landowner and I'm asking the question, okay, this sounds interesting. I listened to Craig talking, Sonja talk. I'm kind of interested. We talked through it as a family. Let's see what kind of offers we can get. I'm going to pick up the phone or I'm going to send you an email here, Sonja, and I'm going to say, okay, my name's Craig Kaiser. I've got 50 acres in El Paso County, Colorado, and we are interested in making some revenue. How does that look for us? You're basically going to take the reins from us. You're going to go to work for us. How does your cost structure work? How do I pay you? Is it a consulting fee? Is it a commission fee? How does that work with Geo Ranch?
well, first of all, the first thing in the process would be to do the land study. And then really, once we determine you as the fiduciary, what direction you want to go and where your most potential is, then it's up to us to start looking into other options. And, basically we do a percent of the lease or a management fee, depending on whether it's a partnership or a lease. And of course, there are all sorts of other variations as far as what might work best for you and the partner, whether it's solar, wind, or carbon. And so really, until we do the land study and we talk to you as the fiduciary and understand your values and your objectives, really, it just, as a fiduciary, you make the decision and we just help you from there as far as talking to the right people. There again, with solar, one thing I'm really fortunate in that American Solar Grazing Association, we have a lot of solar developers that have been members of that group for a long time. And, so just having the right connections and knowing who to contact for the right information really helps the landowner.
Very good. So I have several options working with you of how the cost structure would work, things like that for me.
Yeah, and one thing that I want to point out too is, in working with landowners, the thing is, you're the fiduciary, and if you decide after looking at the options and exploring that, it's still probably in your best interest to go ahead and sell, that's why I'm a commercial real estate, and that's why I'm a real estate land professional, because I'm licensed and we can assist you in that, whether it's, well, and usually there again, I partner with a local person, the local broker, who can do us the most good.
It's interesting you said that, because I think people need to look at large swaths of land, large pieces of property. When I say large, I mean, I know there's some very large landowners on the call. Not everybody owns 10,000 acres, but when I say large, I'm talking over 15, 20 acres. The vast majority of people in the world don't own over 15, 20 acres, right? So that's a sizable piece proportional to the United States. But you look at the asset as, if you're considering selling it, I think it's really important to understand that if you can generate revenue on that asset, if you can increase your baseline on that asset in any way, shape, or form, you've changed the price of that asset as well. I think so for me to pick, so if I'm in that boat, Sonja, it's not going to cost me anything to just simply pick up the phone or send you an email and say, Sonja, here's my piece of property. What do you like, a free consultation? Like, what do you think we should do here? Right. It doesn't cost me anything to just have a conversation with you. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, that's good. Let me see here. So Ryan asks a question. So he's asking a question to me. What's different about LandGate than the traditional land listing platforms? That's a great question, Ryan. LandGate's, we're a unique company because we didn't start as a marketplace. We are a data and analytics company. So when I was showing you and we were clicking through some of these properties, and let's just jump back into here, and when I click on this piece of property and all these analytics load, We're not getting these analytics from anywhere else. We generate this. So we are the source of all of these analytics. We are the source of the indexes. We generate analytics. That's a huge change. That's a huge difference. What we also do when listings go up on LandGate, if I was this landowner and I click this create listing button, all my listing that I've created, the analytics are appended to the listing as well. When a commercial broker, Keller, Sonja is a member of the Keller Williams commercial, her listings that she gets on the commercial side that go out to MLSs and things like that, we pull those in, we append our analytics to those listings as well. You get access to all of those public listings on LandGate. You also, you have to generate an account, but you get access to all of the analytics on those listings as well. So we append an enormous amount of information to listings that most of those sites don't do. The vast majority of sites out there, from residential, commercial, and land, they're just simply pulling what public data is available, leveraging the hard work that folks like Sonja do, the pictures she takes, the description she makes, and they're just putting that in a nice user interface. We don't do that. We do all of those things, plus appending additional proprietary analytics there. Let's see, the next one. People are interested in GeoRanch, Sonja. So another question there about GeoRanch's cost structure there. When GeoRanch gets paid, is it traditional that you get paid a percentage of the deal? So if you were to get me into a solar lease deal, you would get paid a percentage, or if you help me with a transaction, you get paid a percentage, or is there just a flat cost? Is there just a flat fee, or is that negotiable? Is that like on a case-by-case basis?
I would say, yeah, a flat fee, but then again, there are a lot of really small acreage projects or something where just to cover my time and the people that I work with's time, maybe we'll have a minimum charge. But for the most part, as I mentioned, it's like a percent of the lease or a management fee for the partnership, and that is all negotiable too. What we'd like to do is start with the Airbnb of land, which would be 10% of the lease, because GeoRanch would keep 7%, and then 3% would go to the partnering broker, who would either be helping, who would be either providing me with a lead who needs help, and or maybe I'm sending it out to them, and they're helping to find land to lease or something like that. And that again is negotiable as well. But and that reminds me, we kind of looked at the Zillow founders. They created something called Picasso, which is second home buying, where you buy certain weeks. It's not a timeshare, it is actual real estate. But they offer a special program to agents who provide an agent may just want to focus on their residential business as is and not have to learn the second home residential industry. So the agent would provide Picasso with the lead, and then they get 3%, I guess it is, but Picasso, the agent gets 3%, but Picasso just basically takes it from there and does all of the work. And we're kind of thinking about doing that very similar thing because, frankly, I know most land brokers, this is not their specialty. Their specialty is being great at sales. And so if they run into a client and they just really can't help them or don't know how, then they can talk to me about, helping them from there on. But because they provided me with that client, obviously I would provide them with a referral fee. And that's one nice thing about the real estate industry and being a licensed realtor, and is we have a standard way of helping each other. and
Yep.
saying thank you to each other. There's a high level of integrity, and I personally, I just transparency and authenticity are just really critical in what I do and what you do, Craig. I mean, it's really
Yep.
critical.
I think so. And I
So,
think there's a point to be made about you, Sonja, and what you just said there is um, this isn't the focus for a lot of land or even commercial real estate brokers, right? And there could be a scenario that if you're not working with someone who is as transparent and is as well versed as you are with these additional types of resources, you may be coerced or pushed into doing a decision that you may not want to do ultimately, right? And I think that's
mm,
what's really nice about you being so upfront and straightforward, where you know that most of the people who are going to call you and talk to you probably don't want to sell. They don't even want to hear you talk about selling my property. I'm calling you, what kind of revenue can we generate? And I think you being upfront and honest with that goes a long way, because that's not always how it works in the real estate world there. But I think that's very good. Teresa has a question here. Um, she asked, so it's better to list. So is it better to list on the $10 a month LandGate app? Let me clarify something very quick. It doesn't cost anything to list on LandGate. You don't have to have, and you do not have to have a subscription. Our LandGate subscription is the due diligence aspect of this tool, where any parcel, you get access to all of the property boundaries, all of the ownership information across the United States, as well as the proprietary analytics. You can generate as many reports. You can do all of these types of things for $10 a month through the app. Now, this is a decision that the folks on the call need to understand and need to make. You can do this yourselves, right? You can go and for myself, I can go and invest money without a financial advisor. It's not what I do every day. Right? I'm fairly well versed, but I use a financial advisor because that's what they do every day. I can go and I can trade stocks for free essentially online if I want to, but I use a financial advisor. GeoRanch is here for the folks that are understanding they need to do something, they need to generate revenue, but they don't know what or how to do it. That is what GeoRanch is here for. And that's what Sonja is here for, is to help you, advise you through those things. There's might be some folks on the call that are extraordinarily well versed. There's plenty of users of the LandGate tool that come from the energy industry. And I mean, it seems like they even know more than I do. They can guide themselves through those transactions, and they do it themselves. Most folks aren't in that boat. And I think that's why Sonja and GeoRanch really serve a strong purpose for folks to understand. You can use the LandGate app, but you can also use GeoRanch as well, because that's getting you to a point where that transaction, you have someone in your corner. This is a great analytics tool, but we're not a consulting group. Sonja is going to be in your corner. GeoRanch is going to be in your corner, guiding you through all those steps, same way a financial advisor would be doing the same thing on the financial side. Sonja, would you like to add to that?
it just reminds me of the story you told last week about the landowner you were working with that was just fine with what they'd been offered for a certain lease, and he thanked
Do you
you a
mind?
week later.
Do you mind if I tell that story? It's a
Please
real,
do. I mean, it's a great
yeah.
story.
Yeah, it's interesting. There was a very large landowner in South Texas. This is a very savvy individual. I would call them a professional landowner. They farmed, they ranched, they had energy projects, they had done everything themselves. And they had received some offers for a solar project on, it was close to, I think, 800 or 900 acres on one of their pieces of property. They have multiple thousands of acres. Um, but they had already received 4 or 5 offers, and they said, well, we pretty much know what the market's going to be. I said, you should just give it a try. It's not going to cost you anything. Give it a try. Post your listing up on LandGate. And he did. It took about 2 or 3 weeks for me to convince him to actually do it. He put it up there, and he emailed me, and we have his testimonial on the website. But he emailed me 2 weeks later, and you got to love the South Texas vernacular. But he says, "Boy, howdy, I sure am glad I listened to you, and thank you for making my grandkids another $20 million. So it's the testament of an open market of you don't know what's out there. You do not know what's out there until you put it in the market. And Sonja, you would never sell a piece of commercial real estate if I sent you a letter saying, Sonja, I want to buy this piece of property. Take it or leave it. You got 2 weeks. But people do that all the time on the leasing side and just assume this is what I'm going to get. And that's not the case.
Well, and that's why we need a land for lease or land opportunity site. Okay. I mean,
Here we
how
are.
do you know
Here we are.
if you're a land?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's, you've got it. And I want to, and you know, we really want to kind of create ones that just focuses kind of well, anyway, we're probably more focused on the Plains and West and more agricultural or you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, landowners who come to me and want to explore their options, I mean, they're going to be, I'm going to put them on LandGate, because LandGate also, for right now, you have the land for ag and recreation. And I don't
That's
have
right.
this, I don't have a site built, but I mean, that's why we need to, you know, our idea is just to focus pretty much on kinds of some a little bit different types of revenue streams. But you know, obviously you and I working together, we can cover a lot more territory.
That's
So
right. And that's a, you, what LandGate does is we provide data and analytics to folks that really dig into properties, just like, you know, so the folks that have been listening and are interested and really like the value proposition here, and I think you should really consider it for Sonja and Geo Ranch. She is gonna dig into the nuts and bolts of every piece of property that she comes into contact with. So if there's anybody out there interested, uh, just to see what their property can do, see what kind of options they have out there. Sonja's your gal. Here's her contact information. We're up here at the top of the hour. I think if we did not get to your questions, we will send you a personal email. We'll get those sent out to you. But Sonja, I do want to thank you. Thank you for putting together your presentation. Thank you for presenting the opportunity to the landowners. And is there anything else you would like to say to the folks before we close out?
just thanks to Thomas at LandGate and all of your staff. I mean, they're wonderful to work with. And I just want to thank all my friends for being on the call too. And just no, it was an honor. Thank you, Craig.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate it. There again, check out the links that have been put in the chat. We will be having more of these webinars throughout the year. We'll cover some of these topics than we have before. If you want to go and dig into specifically webinars we've had about solar leasing or wind leasing, feel free to dive back into those. And we have some exciting stuff coming throughout the rest of the year. So thank you again, Sonja, and we appreciate everybody who joined us today. You all have a great rest of your day and a great week. We'll see you.